Did I hear that right? Are you planning a trip to Knoebels? Sounds to me like you're about to make one of the best decisions ever. This historical amusement park is full of so much charm. It's hard to leave without a smile. Packed with good rides, good food, and good people, it's tough to have a bad day at this park. Make sure to keep all hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the vehicle as we drop right into this guide. If you followed along with my other theme park ultimate guides, then you'll be familiar with the format of these videos. I like to break them down into 3 different segments. These would be what you should do before visiting the park, what to do once your plans are locked in, and finally, what to do once you're at the park. At the end of this video, it is my goal to have you as prepared as possible to have an unforgettable visit to this real-life amusement museum. Making these videos for you guys takes a lot of work, so I really appreciate all the support you're giving me. Every like, view, comment, and subscription really helps me out a lot. But if you feel like helping me out further, check out my Patreon. For just $1 a month, you can help me in my journey to bring even more of this high-quality content to you guys. In this video, I'll be discussing the best times to ride the major coasters like Phoenix and what rows you should ride it in, so stay tuned. Let's dive in. Like most amusement parks, there are some steps you should take to prepare before visiting. This would include things like what you should wear and where you should be staying. With how crowded this park can get, following a guide like this can elevate your visit to the next level. This is where we'll be discussing park entry options, as well as everything you should consider bringing with you to the park. Tip number 1, pick the right hotel for you. There is really only a small selection of options that you have available for places to stay nearby to Knoebels. One option, which is a bit more on the costly side, would be staying at one of the on-site cottages. Staying at these is a lot like staying at an Airbnb, so this would be a great option for slightly larger groups. Within about 15 to 20 minute drives are various inns and 2-star hotels, so if your group is much smaller or if you're traveling alone, these are the places I'd recommend staying if the on-site cottages are too expensive. Tip number 2, know what to wear. I've mentioned it in other videos and I'll mention it here. You should listen to the enthusiasts when it comes to attire. This is in regard to their choice to wear cargo shorts. These come in a wide variety of designs, but the key here is that you get ones with zipper pockets. If your pockets utilize buttons, things could easily slip out. Next, you need to have comfortable shoes. There are plenty of newer brands out there making super comfortable walking or running shoes that are designed to be worn all day long. Next, a good t-shirt. This is Pennsylvania, so unless you're visiting during the winter, just go with a t-shirt all day long. It's going to be hot and humid while you're here, and there's a guaranteed chance you'll be sweating quite a bit, so you want a light colored t-shirt made with good materials to keep you cool. In this case, athletic shirts are generally a good option. Once again, I really want to emphasize the importance of wearing proper shoes. While this park isn't all that large, you're going to be on your feet all day long. Tip number 3, know what to bring. As with any theme park trip that I go on, I've always found it to be a good idea to bring a small backpack. This ensures that you can bring all the necessities like pain meds, hand sanitizer, small snacks, a hydro flask, and more. This is a topic I might do later, as picking the right backpack is a quest I've been on for quite a while. You generally don't want to bring one that's too large and pack it full with everything you could possibly need. Knoebels generally has slightly longer hours, so you don't want to completely weigh yourself down. One final thing that I would recommend bringing is a portable charger. You're going to be most likely spending your entire day at the park and presumably taking lots of photos, consulting the park app for information, or generally getting distracted by whatever it is you do on your phone. The last thing you want is to have your phone dying on you while you're still at the park. The final thing you'll want to bring is what I call a cheese rag. I personally sweat a lot, so having a rag around to wipe that sweat away is a good idea to try not to allow yourself to be too gross and sticky. Tip number 4, plan to spend 1 to 2 full days here. While it doesn't have a ton in the way of coasters, Knoebels is home to 58 different rides beyond their coasters. They have almost every flat ride that you can imagine, including ones that are no longer produced. With a number of rides, as well as the large amount of really good food choices here, you wouldn't want to cut your visit short at just 1 day. Tip number 5, pick the best time to visit. Knoebels draws in just over 1 million guests a year, and the crowd levels show it. Sometimes the lines can get longer, but due to the sheer number of rides here, as well as the stellar operations on some of them, lines at most of the rides are effectively guaranteed to be short the entire day. Some rides, like Impulse, can get longer lines, but this is an exception to the rule. With all this being said, I'd be willing to say with full conviction that you can visit this park at just about any time of the operating season and be able to check everything off your list. Tip number 6. Use these resources to help with planning. When picking out the best day to go, there are several websites like isitpacked.com and qtimes.com, which is a great resource for helping to anticipate what crowd levels could be. Something I should note here, these websites are not 100% accurate and only give an estimation of what they think crowds will be like on a day-to-day basis. They get most of their data from historical figures, so keep this in mind when visiting them. Tip number 7. Try visiting during the special events. Knoebels has special events for some of the most major holidays like Halloween, Christmas, and 4th of July. These aren't big enough that I'd recommend skipping out on your local amusement park's holiday offerings, but if you are local to Knoebels, I would highly recommend visiting these events. Tip number 8, pre-purchase park entry online. Moving ourselves online, this is where you want to go to purchase your ride tickets. When buying individual tickets, it is significantly cheaper and quicker to buy them online. It helps speed up the process at the ticket booth, ensuring you can get a guaranteed all-day wristband. Tip number 9, download the Knoebels app. I will probably state this tip in just about every video. If the park has an app, you want to download it. These are great for getting not only live wait times and ride closures, but also for finding information on shows and having a digital park map. It's available on both Android and iOS, meaning unless you have a flip phone, you can download the app. These apps have a pretty decent filtering option so you can find exactly what you need, be it restrooms, rides, restaurants, and more. Now that you've picked out when you're going and all that, we should dial in more and figure out what to do while you're at the park proper. The most important part of this section is what to do at the start of your day. You really need to plan on making the right moves so that you beat the crowds early. Tip number 10, save at least $150 to bring with you into the park. While you're at this park, you're going to be paying for a lot of different things. Having at least $150 to your name is a good idea for a single day here, so you can pay for meals, lockers, and any additional things like snacks, on-ride photos, and souvenirs. You most likely could get by spending a lot less than this, but generally, I feel like this is a safe amount of money to have ready. Tip number 11, know where the best places to eat are. Knoebels has been awarded multiple times for having some of the best food offerings out of any amusement park, and it's for a good reason. The one amazing benefit of this park is that the pricing of the food items is not what you'd typically expect at an amusement park. Expect to pay no more than what you usually would outside of one. Anyways, here's our top 5 favorite restaurants. Number 5, Backyard Barbecue. Number 4, Potato Barn. Number 3, The Pizza Restaurant. Number 2, Phoenix Junction. And finally, number 1, The Wharf. Tip number 12, know which flat rides are the best. Here are the top 5 flat rides at Knoebels. This one was tough due to the fact that there were so many of them here. Number 5, Looper. Number 4, Satellite. Number 3, Whipper. Number 2, Tornado. And finally, number 1, Power Surge. Tip number 13, know which coasters are the best. Rather than completely spoil last week's video, links in the description, I'll just tell you what the top 2 best coasters are in the park. For me, these would be Phoenix and Twister. Tip number 14, make a checklist of all the things you plan on bringing with you to the park. I mentioned earlier how you should bring a small backpack filled with all the essentials you might need. I know this doesn't apply to everyone, but I can tend to be very forgetful, so having a written checklist I can consult before leaving my hotel has been a lifesaver. Make sure to write down all of the things you plan on bringing with you to the park and double check it before you leave. When I say everything, I mean everything, including the clothes on your back. You really wouldn't want to forget those. Tip number 15, either list or visually plot out your route using the park map available online or through the app. Later in the video, I'm going to give you a rundown of what I believe is the ideal itinerary for how to conquer this park. Even then, I wouldn't expect you or myself to remember every detail about this plan, so make sure to visually write down what your plans are exactly so you can consult back to these. In my opinion, when you're in the meat grinder, it's always a good idea to keep a list of goals and a plan handy so that way you can stay on track. You can easily draw on the map itself by taking a screenshot of the park map with your phone and using the included markup tools available inside the default photo gallery apps. This will allow you to visually chart out your path, or you can always use a list instead. Tip number 16, know where your entry options are. Knoebels has multiple ways of getting in and 3 different parking lots. If you're entering from the north, I'd recommend going to either the east or west parking lot. The west parking lot is much smaller and a bit farther of a walk, but it can also be a bit less crowded, so it would be easier to get out at the end of the day. For the other approaches, you can go to whichever parking lot is closest. Finally, there is a parking lot to the south of the park, which also doesn't get super busy. There are a number of different ways to get into the park once you've left your car, so there isn't a true quote-unquote entrance per se. One thing to keep in mind though is that in order to ride anything, you need to get a wristband. The ticket booth is located here, roughly in the middle of the park. Tip number 17, check the weather before you visit. Now, the last thing to check would be the weather. You don't want to go to the park and have it cut short by getting rained on, right? Obviously, weather predictions aren't going to be perfect, but if you take a look at the average climate for when you're planning on visiting, it may give you a better gauge on how worried you should be about inclement weather. We've got most of the planning out of the way. Now is the time to put that planning to the test. Keep watching as we're about to dive into the perfect itinerary for how to absolutely master this park. If you're like me and like content creation, stay tuned as I have some great recommendations for the best photo opportunities later in this section. Tip number 18, show up early. Knoebels isn't your typical amusement park in that you don't have to pay for entry to get onto the property. This means that if you show up early enough, you can spend time walking around the park and enjoying the atmosphere while it's empty. You could easily use this opportunity to get a lay of the land or just have a nice relaxing walk under the trees. Tip number 19, grab some breakfast. Before the park opens, Knoebels offers breakfast at a few select locations. One of these was at the Phoenix Junction. When eating here, you can expect reasonably priced breakfast that isn't even close to being a gut bomb. You'll be starting your day off right by eating here. Tip number 20, follow this itinerary. Now for the important part, let's conquer this park. Compared to most other parks, you don't have to be ridiculously strategic when visiting. The lines at a lot of the rides aren't going to be super long, so riding them as you go is going to be your best bet. One very important thing to note, however, is that the ticket counters open at 11 a.m. There sometimes can be a bit of a line at the counter, but if you get your ticket or hand stamp as close to this time as possible, you'll be good. Once getting your tickets, the first 2 coasters you'll want to ride are Flying Turns and Impulse. These coasters are likely to get the longest lines out of the entire park due to their slower operations. From here, the rest of the day is up to you. There are far too many rides here to go too much into detail about when you should ride them. It really comes down to what ride seems most exciting to you. The long and short of it is, don't overthink it. Just have fun while you're here. Tip number 21, know which seats are the best for each ride. In order to have the best experience, you need to ride each coaster in the best seat. Impulse and Black Diamond don't really have much in the way of choice, so we'll skip past both of these. For Cosmos Curves, I highly recommend riding in the back for the most whip. It's a similar story for Phoenix. This ride is 100% the best riding in the absolute last row. Twister, to me, seems like it's the best in the front row, as well as flying turns. Both of these rides do a good job at providing for a great sense of speed, so the front row is king. Tip number 22. Know which are the best night rides. Knoebels isn't often open very late, so getting a night ride might be on the tougher side. Despite this, the two wooden coasters make for great night rides, with Twister arguably coming out on top. Tip number 23. Know where to refill your hydro flasks. Knoebels doesn't have a ton of places to refill your water bottles, but keep this in mind. Wherever food and drinks are sold, you can refill your hydro flask here. Otherwise, your next best option is going to be buying a water bottle. Tip number 24. Know the best places for dessert. Knoebels loves to cherish amusement park history, so they serve a ton of the classics that you'd expect at one. Our top 3 favorites were number 3, Stony Gables, number 2, the Cookie Nook, and finally, number 1, funnel cakes. Tip number 25. Check out these spots for taking great photos. Since Knoebels has no traditional fence perimeter, you can walk just about anywhere for photos. For our first photo spot, I would highly recommend this area behind Phoenix. This is somewhat of a backstage area, so I'd recommend to be extra respectful here and not get yourself into any trouble. The next area is somewhat similar in that it's the area behind Twister. There's a ton of grass out here that you can walk on and get an even closer view of this twisting behemoth. The final spot I would highly recommend is on the Ferris wheel. When the sun is setting, you'll be looking right towards it if you're facing Twister and Phoenix. This could easily provide for some nice sunset shots of both of these iconic wooden coasters. You can also get a great view above Impulse, which is right next to the Ferris wheel. Please remain seated until the ride comes to a full and complete stop. Knoebels is one of those places that will leave some long-lasting memories. Hopefully with this guide, you'll be prepared to take your visit to the next step. So what are you waiting for? Go out there and have the time of your life. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to leave a like and comment below and hit that bell icon. Special thanks to our Patreon supporter, Future Collective. $1 a month helps me bring even more content to you guys, and I even have some exclusive content coming, so check it out. Check the description below to find links to the rest of our pages. Thanks for watching the video, and ride on, Coaster Maniacs!